if there are no questions, the first question goes to Mr. Rilling first, and it is, considering the development that's going on in Norwalk over the past 10 years, what is your vision for Norwalk in the future 10 years?
Thank you very much, and first of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. It's truly important and an opportunity for us to greet the voters in a setting that will allow us to talk about these kinds of issues. It's interesting because there was a team that came in today to Norwalk to look at some potential investments that they were going to make, and the comment that they made was Norwalk is the hottest city on the East Coast. And I firmly believe that. People are starting to look at Norwalk as a place that they want to live, they want to work, they want to raise a family, they want to bring people into the community. Now, we know that Norwalk has some very, very unique neighborhoods, and we want to maintain the characteristic of those neighborhoods. But we also want to grow our grand list, and we want to be a welcoming community. So the way to do that is you develop your urban core, so that people can move into the urban core. You increase your density in that area. You focus on transportation hubs where people want to move to a transportation hub where they can walk onto the train in the morning, come home at night if that's where if they're going to be working out of Norwalk. If they're going to be working in Norwalk, they can have access to public transportation. So the key to any community growing a grand list and developing their urban core is just that, to increase the density where it needs to be increased while still maintaining the unique characteristics of the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods on the outlying parts of Norwalk, each one has its own unique qualities and characteristics, and the people that live there value that. So we want to make sure that we maintain that, again, while still developing our urban core.
Okay, Ms. Brinton.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and all of you for coming out tonight. My name is Lisa Britton, and in this David versus Goliath race, I am the David. My campaign is about accountability, balance, and change for our city and our future, but it's about our voice. Norwalk needs to remain a livable and affordable city, and not turn into, despite the mayor's claims of being a hot city, we do not need to turn into a Westchester County where a $400,000 house carries a $15,000 tax bill. I want to focus on stronger leadership to protect our quality of life. I want to focus on the financial management in terms of who is profiting off of the city of Norwalk, and I want to defend us against special interests and the state. We have a master plan that just got approved a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, it failed to define how densely populated we wanted to become. Can our 350-year-old city, it's only a 100-year-old city, but all of our villages, our roads are quite old. And so how much can our area and our infrastructure hold? And how will we pay for all of this growth when 90% of our city is funded by property taxes? The grand list grew by 12%, but our budget and our operating expenses grew by 24%. We used a rainy day fund, despite all of this hot growth, we used the rainy day fund to fund the operating budget. What's a healthy balance between home ownership and multi-unit apartments? And my concern, quite frankly, is the amount of money that we may have wasted over the last 10 years. When we waste money, we don't help our most vulnerable. And that is something I want to talk about. We get into identity politics when we don't have enough money. I want to talk about the various decisions that have been made over the last 6 years that have cost Norwalkers dearly. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rilling, anything further?
Yes, I'm very proud of Norwalk and the fiscal management and the fiscal conservacy that we use. We are a town that is very financially stable. We spend our money responsibly. We also work very hard to keep taxes as low as we possibly can. If you looked at the taxes for during this fiscal year, 5 out of 6 districts, the median price home, the taxes went down. Not only that, we were able to reduce our mill rate by 10%. We have the lowest mill rate of any city our size in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, Ms. Britton, anything further?
Yes, oftentimes, I didn't hear the mayor say it, but they usually say Norwalk has a AAA bond rating. No, I disagree. The taxpayers of Norwalk have a AAA bond rating. The grand list was $12.2 billion. It's now $14 billion. We've grown by a couple $1 billion, but our budget has grown by $70 million, driven very much by our school system, which I'm sure we're going to talk about tonight. We have the revaluation that has grown has resulted in about 1,800 appeals, and we've got 400 lawsuits, more than we've ever had before. So there is a little bit of a concern regarding how much growth is really happening. And one thing I want to say to you is that every year our grand list does grow up, our budget does go up. In order to sustain a 1% growth in the budget, we will need about $250 million worth of grand list growth. And I'll get into explaining the mill rate. But quite frankly, in terms of the state of Connecticut, it's very questionable whether or not we're going to be seeing that growth in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you both. Next question goes to Ms. Britton first. What is your plan to grow the tax base?
To grow the tax base? Well, it's a combination of what I call prosperity and reform. Let's talk about the good things first. In terms of prosperity, things that we haven't taken advantage of is there is the transportation. There's 3 transportation routes in this country. We have our Interstate 95, which we all know is a parking lot. We have the rail system, and we have the waterways. One of the things that I would like to do, because Manresa is slowly coming off the list, is I'd like to restore that to being a marina. We have a gentleman here in the city of Norwalk that has built a green, high-speed ship that goes back and forth right now between Huntington. We could be transporting goods from Fairfield County to Nassau County. I want to encourage small business. The business we've been in lately has been the apartment business. Meanwhile, we have let small businesses escape. There was a small little potato chip firm that wanted to come. They made 3 calls to redevelopment, never got any traction. We talk about developing the Wall Street area. We let a restaurant go up to Black Rock. We want to talk about giving a tax credit to a developer for a building that's suffering a little bit. We let the brew house get out of this town. Could have been where the ballet studio is. We need to take care of the small businesses. The other thing I have a plan for is that we've always been a service town. We could be linking our high schools, Norwalk Community College, with the trade schools. Right now, there's an individual Mr. Baum is trying to set up a trade school on 25 Van Zandt. We could be bringing the trades in terms of plumbers, electricity, HVAC. Those jobs are jobs that can't be outsourced. Those are jobs that we as Norwalkers have traditionally done. We could bring more of that for our students so that they don't have to leave Fairfield County. One of my sons is in India because there are no jobs here. My other son is still in school. Maybe he'll be able to come back to Connecticut. But right now, that is not an option.
Mr. Rilling.
Thank you. You grow your grand list exactly the way I mentioned before. Nobody in the Fairfield County area is building Class A office space anymore because there's just too many vacancies in the office spaces in the area. But what you do is you develop your urban core. You focus on the transportation hubs. You develop that area where you have young millennials wanting to come into the area. They want to be able to afford to live here. You need to have mixed use, retail, and residential areas in the same area, so that when you have the residents come in, the businesses follow because they have a customer base that's right there with them. So again, it's growing the grand list was the question, and it is by developing the urban core, by developing the areas around the transportation hubs, and making sure that people have a place to live, young people who want to come into Norwalk because like I said, they want to be able to look at Norwalk as a place that has a wonderful location, located right outside of Manhattan, located in Lower Fairfield County. So you want to make sure you develop your urban core, develop the transportation hubs so that young people have a place that they can afford to live, and as they come in, the businesses will follow.
Okay, Ms. Britton, anything further?
Yeah, I'd like to ask, well, if we're trying to develop the inner core, I would be curious, and the mayor doesn't have to ask this yet, but I'd like to know what our occupancy rate is with all of the apartments in the urban core. I know one of them that probably is the most occupied is the Waypoint, but I also know that that's up for sale, probably as a result of the reevaluation that's just happened. I build it and flip it. But the question I want to ask is, if we're trying to develop our urban core, then why are we trying to give 15 years of tax credits to the POCO building that will saddle this city for 15 years and produce a $6 million development fee for the builder. If we're so hot, why are we having to give away our money as taxpayers?
Mr. Rilling, anything further?
Again, there have been no tax credits under my administration. The LDA for the Wall Street place was drafted well before I came into office. We are working diligently to try to come up with a plan for the Wall Street place that will be in the best interest of our community, making sure that we get it right. And right now, it's, as I say, it's in litigation right now, so I'm not at a real liberty to discuss it at any great length.
All right, both of you have had answer and rebuttal, so I'm not going to go further on this question. But the next question is a follow-up, and it goes to Mr. Rilling first. Do you support the Wall Street POCO proposal, now before the Common Council, to build 101 apartments for $80 million? If so, why? If not, why not?
Well, right now, there is no proposal before the Common Council. The Wall Street place has been in negotiations for quite some time. We just had some discussions regarding the outcome of that project. One of the things that we found out that there were things that people were looking for in the Wall Street Place project. One of them was, could we save the Garden Cinema? The other one was, can we change the design so it's more reflective of what that area needs to look like? We listened to the people. We went back to the drawing board. We're waiting for some further information relative to how those things are going to move forward. But right now, there is no proposal before the council and no advancement of this project until we get satisfied. We heard the people, we listened to people, and that's what responsible government is all about.
Ms. Brinton?
No, I do not support the deal. The deal was going forward up until I got the cross endorsement by the Republican Party, and the mayor knew that this would be a one-on-one race, and it's been tabled. And it's been tabled until after the election. I do not support it. This is right now a 101-unit apartment that is $80 million. Apartments, 100% affordable. Affordable is a funny term around here right now. I think affordable should be defined as the rent you pay, not necessarily crony capitalism, which involves low-income tax credits so that developers can raise cheap funds and then cities give years and years and years of tax credits. I would like to ask anybody in this room if you think $800,000 for an apartment unit is a reasonable price. The median price for a family home in Norwalk is about a little over $400,000. So someone is making a lot of money on this deal. And bear in mind that this building has been sitting there for the last several years. So the steel girders are already up. So an $80 million project, $800,000 a unit. I think Citibank should be held responsible. 2 years ago when I was running for office, I stood in front of a very, very bad photo from the hour blowing in the wind, and I opposed the project. And I said we needed to tear up the LDA. It was a bad project then. That's why it took so long to get through. It was conceived in Mayor Knopp's administration, but the financing on this was dodgy back then, and it was only 40% affordable housing. But these apartments have market rate rents. They are not affordable. And the taxpayers of Norwalk will be bearing the cost. We've had demographers tell us that the number of children that would be in this building is anywhere between 25 and 50. I suggested if this was going to go through that we would maybe try to make it an over 55 or turn it into artist lofts. But we do not need to be putting more strain and stress on our tax rolls, especially when this building will only be paying, as it is proposed at the moment, $175,000. If it was doing market rate, it would be paying $1.5 million in property tax to the city coffers.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Mr. Rilling?
You can rest assured that the city is working very diligently to try to make this the best project that we possibly can have. The problem right now is that we're dealing with one of the largest lending institutions in the entire world, and they own the project. So we have to sit down at the table like responsible people and talk about what we can do to make this the best project that can fit in Norwalk. The issue is Wall Street. We want to make sure that Wall Street becomes a vibrant downtown area, and we're doing everything we can to do that. We have plans to invest over $4.5 million in the Wall Street area to include facade replacements and other things where people can look at the Wall Street area and say, this is a downtown area that we're bringing back to vibrancy, giving it energy, getting people down there walking and getting people moving into the area.
Okay, anything further?
Yeah. Mayor, did you say that this was the largest institution in the world? Did I hear a hint of fear that you're afraid of Citibank? I spent 25 years in the corporate world, 20 years with AT&T, and 15 years as a management consultant, working with banks, working with Fortune 500 companies. I would have absolutely no problem walking into Citibank and saying, are you sure you want to hold little old Norwalk hostage over a project, a bad project? They messed up. They gave a loan. It was defaulted. It's their problem. It is not Norwalk's. We are better off to let that building sit there than to take on 15 years of tax credits and everything else that that's going to turn into. And so I would relentlessly shame Citibank until they coughed that up and put it on the open market, sold it for whatever they could get on the dollar, and we would start all over again.
Okay, thank you both. At this point, I want to say to those who arrived in the auditorium late, we have requested all the audience to turn off their cell phones and pagers or to put them on sound deadened. All right, so if you haven't done it, please do it. Next question will go to Ms. Brinton first. The quality of the schools is always an important reason why people choose to move to a town. If elected, how will you address the challenges of Norwalk schools, such as the influx of English language learner students?
What a great question. Those of you who know me, I have been involved in the school system. In fact, that's how I got involved in my civic life here in Norwalk. Started out as a PTA president, fundraiser, had red apples, advocacy, moved on to the district data management team. I've been working to close the achievement gap in this city for 15 years. That is why we are the #1 urban school district in the state. One of the challenges has always been is that Norwalk compares itself to our leafy suburbs, and we never should have. We're one of the 4 best states in the country. We've got New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Connecticut. It's one of the things Connecticut does do well is education. And we have a very diverse population. We have been doing ourselves no favors by trying to compare ourselves to our leafy suburbs. We are probably, if we're the best urban school district in Connecticut, we're probably one of the best urban school districts in the state. I can attest to that. We are in the best position to educate these new students, but we will struggle to fund it. And we have been shortchanged in our ECS funding for as long as I've been here. I've been fighting this ECS battle. Mayor Knopp started it, the lawsuit against the state for the unfair funding. I've been part of that for 15 years. We are now in a crisis situation given the number of children coming in. But bear in mind, Norwalk is the best district to be able to educate these children, but we need help. And so I would be promoting it with foundations, I would be going to corporations, I would be putting pressure back on the state. We have a state policy that has been very generous and encouraging immigrants, but they cannot put the entire burden and cost on individual towns like ourselves. It is not sufficient for our leafy suburb neighbors to put out hate has no home signs and not educate these students. We are the only country, I might add, that relies completely on property taxes in individual cities to educate its children. Most other Western nations do this at a state level so that you do not get these pockets of poverty and this complete gap in academic achievement.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Rilling.
Well, I'm very proud of our school system, and I'm very proud of the teachers who teach our young children. If you recall, many years ago, there would be the concert hall would be filled with parents complaining that the city schools were not getting their fair share. We have changed all that. We have developed a working relationship with our Board of Education to help them implement their strategic plan, to help them implement their 5-year capital plan, so that we have given them the money that they need, and we have done so while still keeping taxes as low as we possibly can. We feel that investing in our city, investing in our students, is the wave of the future. Our Norwalk Public Schools is the most successful public school system right now in the state of Connecticut. We have achievement index higher than any of those in our district representative group, and we have made some tremendous strides in reducing the achievement gap. And that's because we have worked together with the Board of Education. We no longer have that adversarial relationship. We know what we can do with the school system. We've helped them, as I said, implement their strategic plan, which is showing tremendous results. And it's because we sat down at the table, we started working things out and making sure that we do everything that we can to provide education for our students. And as each year, the Board of Education, at the end of the year, has had, in my administration, approximately a $2.1 million surplus because we asked them to be frugal, to be responsible in their spending, and at the end of the fiscal year, we look at how we can further that money forward so that they can use it in the next year as well. And that will also help us when we start talking about the influx of English language learner students. We know that at the end of this fiscal year, the Board of Education will most likely have a surplus and will be able to use that to offset any costs that we're experiencing this year with the influx of the English language learner students.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brinton, anything further on this?
Well, I know about the fights and the acrimony because I was in the audience over the last 15 years and trying to and working to close the achievement gap. But one of the challenges is now, as mayor, is that the school budget over the last 6 years has grown by $40 million. We added 500 students in the last 6 years, and these were high need students. Our latest arrivals are even higher need students. They've been traumatized, they've been out of school for a while. There's a difference between closing the achievement gap and then suddenly having a genuine crisis on our hands. We get nothing from this. We get, like I said, virtually nothing back from the state. 5%, about $10 million of our $200 million school budget has been funded by the state. One of the things I wanted to ask the mayor is, have you reached out to the Department of Education to alert them to the fact that we are having a bit of a surge in students, Mayor?
All right, that's time. Mr. Rilling.
We have students coming into the city of Norwalk that have high needs. And you know, it's our obligation to educate them. It's the humanitarian thing to do. So it's federally and statewide required, but it's also the right thing to do. These are young people that experience the trauma that we can only imagine. They were held at the border, they were released from detention centers, and they migrate to where they have friends and family with whom they can live and feel safe. I have a story about a little guy named Mario. Came from Guatemala in 8th grade. He then went into Norwalk High School at 9th grade. He didn't speak one bit of English, but with the Norwalk P-Tech program that we put in place, he was able to graduate from Norwalk High School in 4 years, and also with a 2-year college degree from Norwalk Community College. Those are the type of young people that we have. It's in our best interest to educate them, to help them, and to make sure that they can help our economy and make sure that they are contributing members of our society and give them the opportunities that they so need.
That is time, I'm afraid. There will be a follow-up question on the schools. You've both done rebuttal, but we get another question on this. This one will go to Mr. Rilling first. How will our school system be improved?
Well, you just heard my opponent say that we gave the school system, an increase in budget over the last 6 years of $40 million. You have to invest in our children. You have to give the teachers the resource, the training, the things that they need to help our young people grow and develop to the greatest potential. We also have to provide for our young people and our teachers an infrastructure that is conducive to learning, giving them a good place that they can attend school so that when somebody plugs in a microwave, the circuit breaker doesn't break out. We need to make sure that our schools are up to code. We need to develop them. Unfortunately, our school system, our school infrastructure has been neglected, and now we're taking steps. We have invested $189 million over the next 5 years to make sure that we're building new schools, we're renovating older schools as new, and we're making sure that young people have a place that they can go to school of which they can be very proud. But investing, those are just bricks and mortar. They don't really educate children, but what we do have is money that we can provide for our children to implement the strategic plan, to give the Board of Education the money they need. When we invest in our school system, and our school system thrives, the property values in our community go up, people want to move here, people want to raise their children here. I had a family come in a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking, and we just told me they just moved here from Westport. I said, oh, well, very welcome. They said, we moved here from Westport because of your school system. It's a diverse school system, it's a progressive school system, and it's helping, and young people are learning, and we wanted to be a part of it.
Okay. All right, Ms. Britton.
Thank you. I enjoy hearing the mayor talk about our school system because I've been living it for the last 15 years, teaching writing and debate to students in grades 4 through 8 and tutoring high school students. I also spent some time in the Housing Authority for several years teaching writing as well. One of the problems that we're facing, though, right now in the school system is money. And as I become mayor, I hope to become mayor, I have to look at, one thing that has never happened in the city of Norwalk is a mayor that has actually promoted the school system. Yes, it's been less acrimonious in the last year, but basically we've never had a mayor that genuinely felt that it was a responsibility to take care of the school system. Yes, it is the job of the Board of Education, the superintendent, but I point to a city like Newark, New Jersey, where at that time Cory Booker brought in Mark Zuckerberg and brought in a lot of assistance and money into his city. My job as mayor would be to bring in more money to our city. As long as I've been a parent, a teacher, an activist, a member of the district data management team, we have struggled to fund our school system. One of the things I asked the mayor, and I know what the answer is because my team looked into this, is whether or not with this influx of students, if he had reached out to the state Department of Education to let them know what's happening here in Norwalk. And the answer to that is no. You called Senator Himes, but you have not alerted the state to the situation that we find ourselves in with our students. One of the things that we have, a couple of years ago, I looked at our budget, and we have a big budget. We have schools, we have books, we have technology, we have bricks and mortar. But the only thing that we spend on our teachers is about 37% of the budget. About 57.79 goes to teachers. This was about 5 years ago. So in terms of what we're actually spending on academics, we have gotten further and further away from what we need to be doing in education because we have to provide a lot of social services. This is one of the reasons why we need more money.
I'm afraid that's time. Mr. Rilling, do you want to say anything further on this?
Yes, to answer the question, we have been in contact with the state, but Congressman Himes has indicated to me that he may have been able to locate some money that will be able to assist with some of our English language learners. But we have reached out. We know that we have this influx of English language learners, and we know that, again, we have to educate them. It's the right thing to do. We welcome them, and we want to help them achieve to their fullest potential. And that's what the school system is all about, and that's what it should be.
Okay.
What are you going to do, Mayor Rilling? What are you going to do? Sorry.
All right, is that it for this? All right. Next question goes to Ms. Britton first. And it is, please comment on the state of senior housing. Specifically, what needs to be improved here in Norwalk and what can be done going forward, and what would you do to encourage at individual levels, such as auxiliary apartments for family? Senior housing.
Senior housing. I was at the Marvin and the Senior Center this past week, and that issue came up. That is the biggest issue here in Norwalk in terms of affordability for those of us who have lived here is figuring out how to downsize from our family homes and or seniors who need to move into a more affordable accommodation or assistance. One of my suggestions for POCO, if the deal was going to go through, was to make that senior housing or over 55 housing. I was attacked for that. Affordability is the issue in this city, and people love Norwalk. Part of the reason why I'm running for mayor is because I don't want to leave my home. You get hooked on Norwalk. It's a fabulous town. But the situation we've got right now is because of the school system, it is, and because of the issues we've got young folks, we've got senior folks, we've got every few people in between, without a lot of jobs in the state of Connecticut, mind you, is I worry that the school system is going to start to cannibalize other parts of the budget. Part of making sure you don't waste any money on some of your land deals is so that you can take care of your more vulnerable individuals in town. And we have not done that very well. And so one of the things that I want to continue to make clear is the state of our finances. The mayor says we're growing, we're this beacon, and everybody wants to come here. I ask, who are we building Norwalk for? Are we building Norwalk for all these new people coming in, or are we trying to take care of the people that are here? We have wasted money in land use, lawsuits, lost grants, the walk bridge, third-party agencies. When we waste money, and I'm talking tens of millions of dollars, we're not able to help the senior center. We're not able to help those that are most vulnerable. So I am committed to senior housing.
And I'm afraid
We have to balance
time.
it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Rilling.
Well, we have to take care, the community is judged on how they take care of their seniors and how they take care of their children. Our seniors, we invest money in the senior center. We've just hired a chief of community services who will be reaching out and working with people from all spectrums to see what kinds of needs the city of Norwalk has and what we can offer. We have some wonderful senior housing here in the city of Norwalk. Can we use more? Yes, we can use more. We also are very, very active every single year. We increase the senior tax relief that people can apply for. We want to keep people in their homes. But some of the projects that are being developed in our urban core, we're finding two things happening. We're finding millennials coming in. They want to be able to live in the downtown urban core. But we're finding some empty nesters who also have a lot of equity in their home. They want to sell their home and they want to downsize and move into some of those units. The earlier question that was mentioned was how many of those units are being occupied. I can tell you very confidently that the vast majority of those units that are being built throughout the city of Norwalk are being occupied, and they're not generating the numbers of students that everybody is claiming that they might. So we are working on making sure that we develop appropriately. We have smart growth. We want to make sure that we provide for the young people who want to come here, and we want to make sure that we provide for our seniors. And I think we're doing a fairly good job of that.
All right, any rebuttal, Ms. Brinton?
Not really a rebuttal, but just a follow-up, because I didn't discuss the auxiliary units. I think that's a positive thing in order to be able to build an auxiliary unit or a mother-in-law unit for an older relative. But this will lead us to, I'm sure there'll be a question about it. We do also have an issue with our illegal apartments. We do have a lot of multi-units that have gone from 2 to 3 to 4. And so one of the concerns we might have about these auxiliary units is what that could ultimately turn into in our city. But the senior housing is a very serious issue for everybody who wants to stay in this city. And I point back to giving away tax credits to developers is not the way to look after the people who live in this city. And also as our school system chips away, if we don't find alternative sources or additional sources of revenue, things like fixing sidewalks that seniors care about, the mobility issues, more of one thing means less of another.
Okay, that's time. Thank you. Mr. Rilling, anything further?
Yeah, my opponent keeps mentioning tax credits. There are no tax credits being given to anybody by the city of Norwalk. The only tax credits that people are entitled to are the enterprise zone tax credits, which have been in existence for many years under a federal statute that the Norwalk city has decided to offer in certain areas in order to develop those areas, and those areas are being developed appropriately. So if you look at the Residence Inn by Marriott, if you look at the Ironworks, and you look at the Sono Collection, those are the only 3 developments in the entire city of Norwalk that have received tax credits.
Okay, I want to thank you both on that. The next question goes to Mr. Rilling first. Many agree that the Norwalk Parking Authority hurts both small businesses and consumers. In what way does the NPA help Norwalk, and what are your plans for the NPA?
The NPA is just embarking on a citywide traffic and parking study to make sure that we build out the right parking. Most people say that one of the biggest problems in the downtown area is parking. Well, we have to make sure that we provide parking, that we provide turnover, and that we provide opportunities for people to go down and do their business down in the center of town. One of the things that we're working on right now is, as I mentioned, a traffic study that will analyze the traffic and parking throughout the entire city of Norwalk and find out where the greatest opportunities are, where we can increase parking, where we can make parking more efficient and more effective. And those are the kinds of things that allow businesses to come into our city, because they know that when people come downtown, they'll be able to find parking places, they'll be able to do the things and be able to shop in our downtown area. So the parking authority, they're people who work very hard on behalf of the city of Norwalk to make sure that parking opportunities exist.
Okay, Ms. Brinton.
I believe the parking authority was originally created to manage the parking garages that were built, so a separate agency to maintain and manage that. I happened to bump into some of the parking authority people at the Touch a Truck event a couple of weeks ago, and I said to them, wow, it was right after they'd installed the parking down the Wall Street area. I said, you guys are trending on social media in Norwalk with about 50 shares, because they had just ticketed all the clients at BJ Ryan's. The problem I have never had a problem parking in the Wall Street area. I've had problems parking in the South Norwalk, but I have never had a problem getting a parking space, primarily because the POCO building is there. It has chased off most of the businesses. So I think it was a little premature for the parking authority to go in and institute this, the parking fees. The businesses are very upset about it, and I agree. I don't think that I don't believe the parking authority, and this is the problem with the third-party agencies, and if I was elected mayor, I would be auditing our third-party agencies. They are separate boards. They're not accountable necessarily to the public. They've been appointed by the mayor. And so when I spoke to the people at the parking authority on that Touch a Truck Day, I said, you're kind of in a little bit of trouble. And the individual said to me, well, they're just gonna have to get used to it. If they don't like it, they can come down to a meeting and complain. It's my understanding that the parking authority did not talk to the businesses in the Wall Street area before they instituted this new plan. That's a problem. There was another plan instituted down at the beach where there was not a lot of discussion. This city is obsessed with parking. Absolutely obsessed with it. I think that hurts business. Parking is supposed to encourage turnover, but that's not our problem right now in Norwalk. Our problem is getting people into that area. So I think that the policy was instituted prematurely. I would, if elected mayor, I would resume, I would like to sit down with the parking authority and look into the books and see what's actually going on there.
Okay, Tom, do you want to say anything further on that, Mr. Rilling?
Yes, the plan on Wall Street was implemented at the request of the Wall Street Business Association or the Wall Street Neighborhood Association because the businesses down there did want turnover. We found that a lot of people that were residents of the area, people that were employees of the area would take the parking places out on the street, and people couldn't find a parking place down on Wall Street. I know that change is very difficult at times. We are working now with the parking authority. They've reached out. They've had many public hearings about the parking down there. It was publicized in the paper about the things that they were going to be doing. And then after they started to implement it, then the questions started to arise. So I support working through that issue and trying to tweak it a little bit to make the parking a little bit more effective, having a 30-minute free parking area where people can run into a store rather than have to pay. I spoke with a merchant who said he'd rather have the parking meters rather than the kiosks. So the issue isn't the reverse angle parking, the issue isn't the pay, the issue is sometimes making it very difficult as to how they're going to be down there.
This is time, I'm afraid. Ms. Brinton, anything further?
Yeah, clearly there was a communication gap between the parking authority and the Wall Street businesses when they instituted this plan. There also seemed to have been a little bit of a problem when they painted the stripes. They painted them on Hoyt Street, and then 2 days later, DPW went and tore up the street, and then they repainted it again. The other thing that concerns me a little bit about the parking authority is they also have a new marketing arm called Norwalk Now. And the mayor may be familiar with that because you made a wonderful commercial about South Norwalk earlier this year. And so I have a problem when the parking authority starts getting outside of its purview of parking. If we have enough money and ability to communicate and make a commercial, you have enough money to communicate with the businesses down on Wall Street. Putting it in the paper is not sufficient and not acceptable. So we need to re-examine the practices of the parking authority and make sure that it serves the businesses and the people of Norwalk.
Okay, thank you both. The next question will go to Ms. Brinton first. It's about traffic. Norwalk's population spike has brought more vehicles, more traffic, and strains the infrastructure. What would be your plans to remediate the issue of roads not engineered to withstand the increased traffic density?
Well, I am not an expert in traffic, but I can tell you my experience of how we got to this traffic nightmare. For the past 6 years, I've been sitting in planning and zoning meetings watching various large big box apartments get approved. And every single time, no impact on traffic, no impact on traffic, no impact on traffic. And we talked about this 2 years ago in the last mayoral election. And now all of these apartment units and buildings are coming online. And so we are now seeing the parking. Now, some folks in town, we talk about a utopia of someday we won't have any cars and we will be pedestrian. And I welcome that day, but we're still quite a long ways away. Most families still have 2 or 3 cars, and depending upon if they have adult children, they've got 3 or 4. I saw that when I was out door knocking this summer. We need to start looking at the bottleneck areas and studying that. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. The traffic is here. We do have to look at the timing on the lights. I've seen that, some things on West Avenue. That doesn't seem to be calculated the correct way. But I'd be looking for the police. We need to start monitoring that. Waze, as our main thoroughfares have gotten clogged, Waze has made, one thing I didn't realize how bad it was hearing how much West Norwalk and Cranberry are experiencing cut-through traffic as people are looking for every possible way to avoid the main thoroughfares. So it's here, and we're going to have to study that, get some remediation traffic people in here. I am not a traffic expert, but I saw this coming, and I've been seeing it coming, as have many of the friends that sat in the planning and zoning meetings. And whoever that traffic study guy is, he should be fired because clearly we have an impact on traffic. So we have to deal with it. It's here, and we're going to have to figure out timing and lights and routing measures. So.
All right, Mr. Rilling.
We have recently reorganized city government to make it more professional. We brought in very, very talented people with new vision and new ideas. And one of the people one of the things that we're doing is we've created a mobility, transportation, and parking unit. And those are the kinds of things that we need to do to analyze, evaluate, and make sure that we make changes wherever we can. We also, when we have some of the development that we're talking about in the urban core, we make the developer improve the infrastructure by widening roads, making sidewalks, making sure that traffic lights are where they should be, making sure that our mobility, transportation, and parking department is going to synchronize those lights by looking and making sure that wherever there is a log jam, we find ways to clear it up. The other thing is, again, the density in the downtown urban area. When we talk about people with 2 and 3 cars, those are the people who live in the outlying districts. The people who are moving into the downtown area, the young millennials, many of them don't have cars. They don't even have a driver's license because they don't want one. So in order to offset some of the traffic problems, you develop your downtown core so people can take public transportation, they can walk, they can take bicycles. We're working to try to get a bike share program down there. They're working with a circulator with the new area down in Sono. And we also have the Wheels to You that now we've provided 25,000 free rides the Wheels to You, where you call up, they come to your house, and they'll take you to an area where you can, and it's $2 for a ticket. So we're trying to find ways to reduce the number of vehicles on the road, and you do that in some of the ways that I just mentioned, but the mobility, transportation, and parking department of the city will be taking care of those things.
Okay, and that's time on that. Ms. Brennan, do you have anything further on that?
Well, in terms of the things that you said that developers were supposed to do, and I can only speak to the areas that I frequent, but I know the Sound Landings over in Sono on Water Street. Those buildings are a heck of a lot closer to the road than I ever thought they were going to be. So there is not a lot of pedestrian walkway there. And those areas, I drove that route very often as I tried to cross over to East Norwalk, and it has changed dramatically in terms of the traffic. Those apartments have cars, and they come down the one-way streets into Water Street, and what used to be a 3-minute cruise down Water Street has turned into 15, 20 minutes depending upon what time I drive down there. So the sidewalks, I don't see them, and there are still cars. That's just my experience over in South Norwalk.
Okay. Mr. Rilling, anything further?
Yeah, again, it's just by making sure that people are going to, developing your urban core so that we get people into Norwalk, we increase our density without increasing our traffic, but encouraging people to use public transportation wherever they can, and making sure that all the infrastructures are improved and the light synchronization. People are coming into Norwalk, and we have to figure out how best to deal with that. And we are going to have traffic. Any vibrant city is going to have traffic, but we have to find a way to mitigate it, make sure that we enforce our traffic regulations, and making sure that people understand that they can take public transportation and they should take full advantage of that.
Okay, I want to thank you both. This is sort of in the nature of a follow-up question, and I'm afraid I may butcher it. But it goes to Mr. Rilling first, and it is, how do you plan on making Norwalk more pedestrian and bike-friendly, especially in respect to, is it NWRT, to the beach? River Valley Trail to the beach?
NWRT?
Yeah, River Valley Trail? Okay.
And again, to make it bicycle and pedestrian friendly, we had a task force called the Bike Walk Task Force. We've made that a full committee or a commission right now because we want to make sure that they continue their work long into the future. We have a team of people working and identifying where bike lanes are most appropriately located and how they should be located. We also have them working on streetscapes, making sure that we do a complete streetscape and making sure that people can walk safely. And it's a committee that's working very diligently. We've seen some results. We're working with other communities as well to connect some of our bike lanes, such as with Darien and Norwalk, so that young people in Darien who want to come to Norwalk Community College would feel safe taking their bicycles. But again, and the Norwalk River Valley Trail, we're working on that and we're funding that, and that's something that will connect Norwalk and Danbury with a pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly area that's off the beaten path, and making sure that people can enjoy that as well.
Okay, Ms. Brinton?
Well, first I want to do a shout out to my friend Mike Mushak. I'm wearing your little bicycle pin that you gave me about 3 years ago. So I'm very supportive of bike lanes, but not in all parts of the city. The Strawberry Hill area, as you're traversing lots of lanes over and over, I don't think that is necessarily a safe area. The Sharrows, I know, have been quite controversial over there in East Norwalk. We are a city that is, in parts, 350 years old. The streets are too narrow, there are too many cars, they're going too fast. I would never want to take my life into my hands on certain roads, and so I do think we have to be quite cautious about where we paint those bicycle insignias. In terms of the Norwalk River Valley Trail, absolutely supportive of it. We have, like I said, beautiful coastline. You go up through the center of town, up into Wilton, absolutely supportive of that. As we increase our density, we have to be extremely cautious and protective of our community space. because that is all that we've got in terms of as we increase the density. So, but I am a little bit more cautious about where the bike lanes are. I think there's some streets that they're not appropriate. It's just too narrow, and we have to kind of maybe review that. But very, very supportive of bikes in the right areas, and certainly supportive of the Norwalk River Valley Trail.
Anything further? Mr. Miller?
Yes, the Bike Walk Commission did a complete study of where bike lanes are most appropriately located in the city of Norwalk. And they found that only 5% of the roads would be where they can put bike lanes safely. So it's not that we're putting bike lanes every place. And yes, sharrows are a reminder to the people that they have to share the road with bikes. We want to encourage people to feel comfortable using their bikes. And if you look, we see that there has been a significant increase in people driving throughout this, riding throughout the city on their bikes. And we want to make sure that they continue to feel safe when they're doing it. So we're only going to put the bike lanes where they can appropriately be located. But we also want to keep the sharrows on the road to remind people that remind the motorists that people will be riding on the bikes on some of those roads.
Okay. Ms. Brinton, anything further?
No.
Okay, thank you both. Next question goes to Ms. Brinton first. Some people from New York move here to rent apartments, but many don't register their car here. What is your plan to collect property taxes on those cars?
Yes, I see all those cars. We all see all those cars. Westchester's become so expensive that they think, you know, Connecticut is cheap. Imagine that. I know that there have been some plate reader, there's some technology that Stanford was looking at, and I think that was maybe shared with you. I do believe, I was talking to somebody on my team, that we need to enforce that. We have a problem enforcing things in the city of Norwalk. A friend once told me, actually it was Fred Wilhelm said it, it was a very good analogy. He said, Stanford's a city and acts like a city. Greenwich is a town, but it acts like a city. Norwalk is a city, but we've always acted like a town. And that's what we like about it. That's why we want to stay here. But the problem is we're getting a lot bigger. And so we don't enforce a lot of things. I also talk about sometimes the decision tree in Norwalk. Do we know you? Yes or no? If we don't know you, do we know you? Yes, we know you. Do we like you or do we not like you? If we don't like you, this has been, enforcement is an issue, not just with the car plates, but with building codes and a variety of other things. I think we need to look into some technology, these plate readers, and we have to follow up on that because we're losing probably millions and millions of dollars. And so there is technology out there to capture that, and we have to get them on the payroll. They gotta be paying like everybody else.
Okay, Mr. Rilling.
Well, we're not losing millions and millions of dollars. And you have to understand that when a person moves into Norwalk, if their car is housed in Norwalk for 6 months and 1 day, they must register their car and pay taxes in the city of Norwalk. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to find out and to monitor something like that. This is not a situation unique to Norwalk. There are people that have their cars registered in Vermont, but they own property in Vermont. Where do they keep their cars? It's difficult to say that they keep their cars in Norwalk 6 months and 1 day. Perhaps they keep their cars in Vermont for 6 months and 1 day. If a person moves to Norwalk and they don't own property anyplace else, they have to register their car here in the city of Norwalk or register in the state of Connecticut within 60 days. And then after that 60-day period, when it's registered, the state of Connecticut will notify us that we have this car registered and we can tax it appropriately. So it's not as easy as one may think, but a lot of times when we do get something, we get neighbors who see this happening. So when you see something where you think somebody is avoiding the taxes in the city of Norwalk, you can notify us and we can take action and do what we have to do. But it's a very challenging thing, and it's not as easy as a small piece of technology that will read license plates. We have that technology on all of our police cars. They read license plates and they're able to tell if the car is registered, or if it's not registered, if the car is stolen, or if it's not stolen, if there's warrants out for the driver, or if there are not warrants out for the driver, those kinds of things. So it's not as easy to deal with that as some may think, and most communities are finding the same kinds of challenges, and I have not been made aware of anybody that has successfully been able to tax every single car that's registered in another state.
Ms. Britton, anything further?
We're going to have to address it. We're a city now, right? The only thing that we enforce is a tax bill on homeowners. If you don't pay your taxes, you will be put in the tax sale and your house will be sold if you don't pay your taxes. We have got to adapt to being a city now, and so to say that it's not easy is not sufficient enough. We are inviting people to come into our community. We're thriving, we're booming. We have to start enforcing some of these rules and collect our taxes, or otherwise it's going to fall back onto single-family homeowners, whose houses we will take if you don't pay your tax bill. So we don't seem to have any problem doing that, but to say it's not so easy, we all know where that revenue is going to go. Where we're going to try and find the revenue, it's going to fall back onto the single-family homeowner. So we have got to find a way to enforce that, and we'll just have to, we can't be the only city dealing with this. Why don't we start consulting with other towns and cities and look for best practices? We don't need to sit there and try and think it up by ourselves.
Thank you. Mr. Rilling, anything further?
No, like I said, it's always easy to sit back and not be a part of a lot of the conversations that take place, conversations that we've had relative to this issue, and say things are easy. It's not that easy. And this is not a situation that's unique to Norwalk. It's not a situation that's unique to Connecticut. It's a situation that exists. It's very difficult to track a car that may be registered in another town if you can't say with certainty that that car, that the owner doesn't own property in another state, or that the owner doesn't keep the car here for 6 months and 1 day out of the year.
All right, I want to thank both candidates. At this point, we go to closing statements. There will be 2 minutes each, there will be no rebuttal, and by the luck of the draw, it goes to Mr. Rilling first.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the people who come out and want to hear from the candidates. You know my story. I'm a lifelong Norwalk resident. I raised my family here. I went to Norwalk Public Schools, as did my children, and now my grandchildren as well. I have a long history of public service. I served in the military for 4 years. I served on the police department for 41 years, 17 years as the chief. I am now in my 6th year as the mayor of this city. It's been a tremendous honor and privilege to serve this community that I love, a community that I owe so much to because it has given me and my family so much. Every day that I walk into this building, I'm proud of what we've done in the city of Norwalk and how we've helped Norwalk grow and develop over the past 6 years. We have a tremendous, we've achieved a tremendous amount by reorganizing city government, by funding our schools, by helping, creating a city, a downtown area that people can be proud of. You know, I don't sit here tonight feeling entitled to your vote. I know that every day that I walk into this building, I have to earn your trust, your respect, and your confidence, knowing that I'm going to do the right thing, regardless of whether it's the popular thing. Decisions at the mayor's level are not easy. There's a lot of layers in city government. It's not easy to say you run your city like a business. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different things that need to be taken into account. So every single day that I'm here, I feel I have to work for your trust, your confidence, and your respect. When I wake up in the morning, I want to look in that mirror and like the guy that's looking back at me. And yes, it's not easy making those tough decisions, but I've proven that I'm able to make those tough decisions, and I ask for your support on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brin.
I want to thank the League for hosting this tonight and for all of you good folks coming out. My campaign is about accountability, balance, and change. Norwalk must remain an affordable and livable community where all voices are heard. This election is a referendum on the mayor's policies and his definition of growth and whether we're moving in the right direction. Or, as I suggest, we've been cherry-picked by developers with tax credits and oversized structures, bringing traffic congestion and impacting our quality of life, forcing longtime residents out due to rising costs. I'm a different kind of candidate. I didn't come through the ranks of the two-party system. I am an independent. I've been civically active for the 15 out of my 21 years of living here. I've closed the achievement gap in our schools. I've tried to fight for better planning and zoning and better city governance. I've also lived and worked all over the world, so I know how special Norwalk is. That's why I don't like what I see. Following the recession, this mayor squandered 3 major projects by not looking after our economic and quality of life interests in terms of the walk bridge, POCO, and the mall. Had I won 2 years ago with my broader financial, business, and educational background, we'd be in a different place, but we can still correct course. I was independently petitioned onto the ballot 2 years ago, and I came in second out of 4. This time I received the RTC endorsement so that I could run a one-on-one race, and for that I am very grateful. But this isn't a red or a blue race. The world is purple and city issues are complex. Most cities have nonpartisan elections where individuals and common sense govern. I hate the political parties, but I hate single party rule even more. Our democracy is built on sharing of ideas, and we lost that with this mayor. We need checks and balances on all the growth that's going on. Without fighting to get more of our money back or looking for alternative resources for our schools, we risk cannibalizing other parts of the city budget or increasing taxes. When a PR person is replaces a grant writer, or when 15 years of tax credits are on the table for a failed project, or when landlords get away with illegal apartments, cheating the rolls, we need to have change. So tonight, I'm asking for your vote. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the league, thanks to both candidates.